My husband lost his cool when the doctor remarked, "I had a second daughter." "A second daughter? You really are serious," he yelled. He assaulted me right out of the labor room. The personnel pushed him off right away and stopped him. Shaken but resolved was my attitude. I surprised him a week ago in a way he never imagined. Charlotte Harris here. For a while, I felt that my life was a dream come true. Although I grew up in a rural village, I went to Chicago aged 22 to pursue a marketing profession. I worked hard, ascended the ladder, and by the time I was 32, I had a strong job at a reputable company. When I met Ethan Harris, life looked ideal. Ethan was the type of man who can make you believe you were the only one in the room. He almost immediately swept me off my feet. Charming, confident, smart. He was a great real estate agent, and his drive matched mine. Not long after we fell in love and were married, it felt at the moment like the beginning of something exquisite. Our cooperation was flawless. I believed every word Ethan would jest about how we would be the Chicago power couple. Knowing I was pregnant appeared to help our love story to become better. I will always remember the expression Ethan showed when I informed him. He lighted up, whirling me around the house, and spoke about all the fantastic things we would do as parents. That was a wonderful occasion, and as my pregnancy went on, I hum on that optimism. 9 months later, our daughter, Lily, arrived. Ethan pounced on her. She was flawless. He was loving, focused, and constantly at my side. To myself, this is it. I had always desired this life. I found I was pregnant once more a year later, and the delight I had was unbounded. I saw Lily growing up with a sibling and our house bursting with love and fun. But during that second pregnancy, things changed. Ethan began working late many of the time. I originally thought he was merely striving to provide a better future for our expanding family, but his demeanor grew colder and more disconnected. He quit expressing interest in baby preparations or inquiring how I was feeling. I reminded myself he was under stress and tried to be patient. Still, I couldn't get rid of the biting sense that something was off. Emma's birth became the turning moment. The doctor saying, "It's a girl," and expecting Ethan to grin to rejoice with me, will always be with me. Rather, his face slumped. His comments seemed to me like a cut to the heart. "Are you positive? Is there no error?" Though I laughed tensely, believing he was kidding, his tone revealed otherwise, suggesting hatred. I grieved that evening as I cradled baby Emma in my arms, not because I wasn't joyful, but rather because I knew Ethan wasn't the guy I had imagined. From there, things just grew worse. Ethan became even colder and more agitated. Usually leaving me in tears, he would snap at the simplest things. The late-night feedings or aiding Lily and Emma didn't appeal to him. Though he was right there in the same house, I began to see a single parent. Though that dream was dashed one evening, I still hoped we would make things right. He smacked me after a little fight about something so small I can't even remember what it was. Rigorous. My ears rang, and for a split second I was too astonished to react. Ethan stared as startled as I did, but instead of apologizing, he bolted from the room, leaving me shaking and afraid. It was the instant I realized this was not only a passing phase. This was something darker, that which was dangerous. I told my best friend, Natalie Brooks. From college, Natalie and I had been close. She was the one person I knew I could rely on. I told her everything. Ethan's coldness, his disinterest in the children, and ultimately the smack. Natalie found much horror in this. "Charlotte, you don't have to live like this," she murmured as she took my hands. "You ought to leave before things grow worse." She said she would assist me, and that promise became the first gleam of hope I had seen in months. Encouraged by Natalie, I made contact with a nearby women's shelter. I feared what would happen if Ethan learned. Suppose he attempted to stop me, But I knew I could not stay, not for me and most definitely not for my girls. I also got in touch with family law-oriented attorney Rebecca Carter. She sympathetically listened to my account and reassured me we could gather evidence to defend the girls and me. At that point, I didn't feel strong, but Rebecca gave me hope I may be. I vowed to myself as I lay awake at night, clutching Emma in one arm and listening to Lily's gentle breathing, I would fight for my girls no matter what it would take. They were deserving of better. We earned better. And I was determined to make sure we had it regardless of how difficult the path ahead may be. The days after that evening seemed as though I was walking on shattered glass. Every sound caused me to shuck. Every instant Ethan spent in the house seemed like a ticking bomb. Though deep down I knew it couldn't continue like this, I attempted to keep Lily and Emma as normal as possible. My daughters were entitled to a mother free of anxiety. Natalie came to be my lifeline. She visited frequently, acting as though it were merely a nice drop-by to prevent Ethan from questionable behavior. She was, behind the scenes, helping me get ready. She brought me in front of Rebecca Carter, the family attorney who would turn into my anchor. My hands shaking, I sat in Rebecca's office, describing everything, Ethan's coldness, his anger, and the smack. Rebecca only nodded. She did not interrupt, and she said something that turned things around after I was done. "Charlotte, you are not alone going to have to accomplish this. We'll see to it your daughters, and you are protected." That same day I spoke with a nearby women's shelter. Marcy, the organizer, a gentle woman, reassured me they could help with interim accommodation. She clarified that Ethan would not be able to locate us at the discreet and safe sanctuary. It scared me as well as giving me hope. Leaving went beyond simply stuffing a suitcase and heading off. It was about demolishing what I knew and confronting an unknown future. But I understood that was the only path. Like Rebecca suggested, I started keeping everything, every icy word, every rage, every bruise. I caught revengestoring. When Ethan's temper erupted, I even videotaped some of our talks. If we went to court, I understood it would be very vital. It wasn't simple, though. Every time Ethan snapped, I had to behave as though it didn't hurt, as though I hadn't already been halfway out the door. Ethan arrived home remarkably early one evening. He entered looking stressed as I was in the kitchen cooking dinner. His voice low, he replied, "We need to talk." "Around what?" My heart thumping, I asked, facing him. He hesitated, then added, "We ought to pause. You, dear, the girls, myself too. Perhaps we should separate some time. You may spend some time staying with your folks." What I was hearing seemed almost unbelievable. He was attempting to drive me away, so presenting it as my decision seemed natural. I remained cool, though. I responded resolutely, "I'm not leaving my daughters." His expression clouded, and for a second I believed he could flare out once again. Rather, he simply said something under his breath and bolted. That was the instant I decided I had to stop waiting anymore. I packed a little suitcase for the girls and me, and the next morning he was at work. Natalie drove us to the shelter. As we left the house, I had an unusual mix of relief and anxiety. At last I was engaged in activity, but I had no clue what would follow. The shelter turned out not how I had anticipated. It was not some frigid institutional venue. It was kind, inviting. The other ladies present related similar tales, and for the first time I felt less isolated. Marcy helped me settle in. I recall her saying, "You're secure now, Charlotte. Go one day at a time." Safety did not, however, imply that the struggle was done. Rebecca and I labored nonstop on the legal matter. We compiled all the data I had and even got in touch with Mrs. Jenkins, my neighbor, who had heard Ethan screaming during one of his eruptions. She consented to testify, claiming she had always worried about Ethan's behavior. Naturally, Ethan did not simplify matters. Uninvited, He began showing up at the shelter, insisting to visit the girls and me. Marcy and the staff always sent him away, but his tenacity bothered me. He even tried to phone me, leaving voicemails full of apologies and pledges to change. Among them one still bothers me. "You're wrecking our family, Charlotte. Come home, I will forgive you." Forgive me, as though I were the one separating our family. Rebecca informed me that this conduct would just help to support our argument. She replied, "He's showing his true colors," but it made no less horrific. When the court day arrived at last, I was a mess. Seeing Ethan seated there with his arrogant attitude as I entered the courtroom made everything in me stop before I turned around and fled. Then I considered Lily and Emma, their small hands clutching mine, their naive faces staring up at me. I was battling for them, not only for myself. Rebecca was astounding. She carefully laid out every element of Ethan's mistreatment and neglect in our case. She played the tapes, showed the pictures of my bruises, and phoned Mrs. Jenkins to testify. Rebecca didn't allow Ethan's attorney get away with painting me as unduly sensitive. She was unrelenting, and I much appreciated her fortitude. I felt like I could breathe after the court at last decided in my favor, giving Lily and Emma complete custody and forcing Ethan to pay child support. Ethan's expression at the reading of the decision seemed as though someone had knocked out his wind. I saw him vulnerable for the first time, and it was very liberating. Still, the fight was not finished. I still had to reconstruct my life, but for the first time in years I felt as though I could. Whispering to my girls as I left the courthouse that day, "We're free now," I said. "Mother's got you." And I meant it as well. That day leaving the courthouse seemed like the first step into a fresh life, yet leaving meant I would have to face terror. Ethan's shadow hovered over me, even with the decision in my favor. Still out there, he was still capable of cruelty and deception. Not yet. I couldn't allow my guard down. Returning to the shelter, I began to piece things together. Within a few weeks, I was able to get a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a more sedate area of the city after the personnel there linked me with options for housing. Though not much, it was ours. I had a location where Lily and Emma could simply be children free from Ethan's temper's weight for the first time in years. Getting used to life as a single mother was more difficult than I had thought. There were evenings when both daughters sobbed simultaneously and I felt inadequate. Packed with bills, I fretted about money all the time. Ethan had been told to pay child support, but he was not regular. Certain months the money arrived late or hardly at all. Rebecca reassured me we could pursue legal action should he refuse, but simply the thought of additional court battles tired me. Nevertheless, I persisted. I was able to stay with the daughters by finding a part-time marketing job allowing me to work from home. I reminded myself every time I felt overburdened why I had gone. I considered Lily's laughing, Emma's little fingers gripping mine, and the still times when I could at last breathe without anxiety. That kept me on the forward path. Natalie stayed right by my side through everything. She became my rock, not only a buddy. She dropped by following her hospital shifts, either with groceries or simply to sit with me while I ranted. She said something that really stayed with me one evening. "You're stronger than you think, Charlotte. Consider what you have already survived." She pointed out the proper thing. I would have survived, but surviving was insufficient. For my girls as much as for myself, I wanted to flourish. One of those protracted evenings of introspection turned up to reveal something startling. As I went over past financial records, I came onto records of accounts and assets Ethan had never disclosed. Though initially I assumed it was a mistake, the more I dug, the more obvious it became. Ethan had been stashing plenty of money. To perhaps keep me in the dark about his actual financial status, he had created accounts under his name and directed large sums of his income there during our marriage. Inside me, I simmered with wrath. All those years he had made me feel little, when he had turned away emotional or financial help. He had been sitting on a secret treasure. I was raging for Lily and Emma, not only for myself. Ethan had kept the money secret out of anger or selfishness, although it would have given them stability. I got right on calling Rebecca. She paid close attention and then remarked, "We can utilize this. He concealed assets, therefore breaching the conditions of your settlement agreement. It is criminal, not only immoral." We initiated a fresh legal process to get what Ethan had sought to keep under wraps. That was not simple. Ethan always rebelled, charging me of attempting to drain him dry. Still, the data was indisputable. Rebecca's knowledge helped us to expose the whole degree of his dishonesty. I had a feeling of justice I never would have imagined when the decision came down in my favor once more. That money turned all around. It was about giving my girls a better future, not about exact retribution. I saved aside college money for each of them and spent it to settle debt and furnish a stable house. I felt for the first time in years that I could breathe free from the weight of financial uncertainty smothering me. In middle of all this, an unexpected friendship started to bloom. My flat complex neighbor, Daniel Reed, had always been friendly to me. He taught, and he would often see me rushing after the girls or laboring to carry groceries. One evening he knocked on my door carrying a tray of cookies and said, "I thought you might need a little pick-me-up." Though it was a little deed, it meant the world to me. Daniel started to regularly show up in our life over time. He was just gentle, patient, and really sympathetic, not demanding or forceful. Emma and Lily loved him, and I started counting forward to visits. I initially felt the small stirrings of hope in my heart for the first time since Ethan. But I healed thanks not just for Daniel's compassion. Everyone around me, including Natalie, Rebecca, the ladies at the shelter, was helping. They all served to remind me that I wasn't by myself. I discovered as I started to reconstruct my life that I wanted to support people who had gone through what I had. I began helping at the shelter, telling women who felt imprisoned or hopeless my story. I told them about the anguish and the terror, as well as about the power I had discovered. I felt a little more entire every time I watched a woman's eyes sparkle with the awareness that she could fight back. Although my life wasn't ideal by then, it was mine, and for the first time in a long time I felt like I was advancing rather than merely existing. I had no idea, though the most startling turnaround still lay ahead. I started to feel calm I hadn't felt in years as I started to reconstruct my life. Each of my daughters was doing great. Emma, now a toddler, was bursting with laughter and endless vitality, while Lily was adapting to school, meeting friends, and returning home with stories about her day. Every milestone they accomplished reminded me of the reason I had battled so fiercely to flee Ethan's shadow. Still, the trip was not done. One last twist had everything ready to be changed. It began with a normal conference with Rebecca to complete some documentation on Ethan's secret assets. She brought nearly cursory mention of Charlotte. There's one last issue we might want to investigate as we were wrapping up. Ethan's financial record points to some dubious links. One might want to investigate it. First, I hesitated. Though the idea stayed with me, I wanted to move forward, not delve further into Ethan's poisonous environment. What if learning more about his secrets may save my girls and myself down road? I thus gave Rebecca the all clear to look into more. I was shocked what she found. Ethan had participated in dishonest real estate transactions, altering records to raise property valuations, then pocketed the extra. The stories he had buried were part of his bigger plan to evade discovery, not only a means of protection from me. Rebecca clarified that this was criminal as opposed to just immoral behavior. Should we forward the material to the authorities, Ethan might be subject to major charges. I struggled momentarily on what to do. Part of me wanted to let everything go, to concentrate on the life I was creating with my girls, but another part of me, the one that had seen years of his lies, brutality, and manipulation, felt great responsibility. Now I was battling to make sure Ethan wouldn't harm anybody else the way he had done to me. I was not only defending myself, Rebecca helped me to forward the proof to the authorities. The probe that followed was rigorous, and soon it was evident that Ethan's offenses extended beyond what we had first believed. After his arrest, he was charged with many charges of embezzlement and fraud. I experienced a weird spectrum of feelings when I got the news: relief, vindication, and most importantly, closure. Ethan lost control of my life with his arrest. He worked for years to keep me imprisoned physically, emotionally, and financially. But these days the tables were reversed. He was paying for his deeds, and I was at last free to go ahead without anxiety. Life started to move to a different beat without Ethan in it. Daniel became even more significant in our life. Always honoring the speed I needed to recuperate, he never tried to hurry me into anything. His silence over time dissolved the barriers I had erected around my emotions. He turned to me one evening as we saw Lily and Emma playing in the park and said, "Charlotte, I care about you, about all of you. I don't want to overstep. Should a future whereby I might be in your life, I would be honored." I nodded and tears flooded my eyes. I felt safe, not only physically but also emotionally, for the first time in many years. Daniel wanted to be there to help my daughters and me as we rebuilt our new life. He was not attempting to repair or control me, and we did, beside each other. We built a loving and laughing-filled house. I did not end there, though. My encounters had set fire in me, a want to assist other women in breaking out from the cycle of violence and recovering their life. Speaking at gatherings and telling my tale, I hope to encourage others to muster the will to break away. Establishing a foundation aimed at helping survivors of domestic violence was one of the finest events of my life. Natalie and Rebecca helped us design initiatives to give women in need legal assistance, emotional support, and a place to stay. Every time I watched a lady leave our doors with hope in her eyes, I felt as though I was respecting the road I had traveled. When I look back, I still find great wonder at my distance. There were times when I felt I would never be able to flee, when I thought Ethan's violence had taken everything from me. Resilience, however, is about finding the will to rebuild, to flourish, and to convert suffering into purpose, not only about surviving. Growing up in a loving house surrounded by kind people, Lily and Emma are the biggest triumph of all, is they will never have to know the anxiety I used to experience. Though it wasn't easy, my path is evidence that justice and bravery can overcome treachery and hopelessness. One thing is also clear to me as I sit here today seeing my girls play in the sunlight. We are free, powerful, and at last home.